Captain Daniel Harris stood on the bridge of the United Earth ship Liberty, his eyes scanning the endless dark of uncharted space. Stars glittered outside the wide glass viewports, but his attention stayed fixed on the glowing displays in front of him. The Liberty was not like other ships. It was smaller, compact compared to the massive cruisers and dreadnoughts of the great galactic powers. Yet inside its sleek hull lived technology no other civilization had ever seen. The crew, handpicked from Earth's best, knew their mission was more than exploration. It was proof to the galaxy that humanity was ready to step out of its shadow. Sensors flickered with sudden alerts. An unknown patrol was approaching fast, metallic signatures too large to be civilian. The Imperial crest appeared on the communication channel, a golden emblem of wings and stars, feared across 1,000 worlds. The Galactic Empire had found them. Officers on the Liberty exchanged uneasy glances. Everyone knew the Empire considered outsiders as either subjects or threats. There was no middle ground. The Imperial patrol hailed them with a booming voice. The officer on the other side sneered when the small human vessel appeared on his screens. To him, the Liberty was a curiosity, perhaps an easy prize. He demanded their surrender in a tone that left no room for refusal. Daniel Harris did not answer right away. He kept his calm voice steady, instructing his crew to hold position, shields active, weapons silent. The Empire's scanners probed the Liberty, but something strange happened. The readings were nonsense. Energy signatures twisted, fading and reappearing in patterns no machine could understand. Hull composition registered as nothing, like the ship was not made of matter at all. Weapons arrays appeared as empty voids. The Imperial crew adjusted their instruments, thinking there was interference, but every scan returned impossible results. The Liberty seemed to exist outside the rules they knew. Inside the Imperial ship, tension grew. The officers had seen pirates, rebels, smugglers, and even rival fleets, but never something that their own technology could not read. Their commander ordered another scan, demanding answers, but the results stayed the same. The ship ahead of them looked like a ghost, unreal yet solid, present yet untouchable. Daniel Harris, watching their attempts, allowed himself a quiet smile. Humanity's technology had been born not from peace, but from struggle. Generations of survival on a dangerous planet had forced humans to push limits. They had created ships that did not run on fuel like others, but on the raw energy of the universe itself. Their defenses were not barriers, but distortions of space, bending light and force away from them. To outsiders, it all seemed like tricks, illusions, or lies. The Liberty moved slightly, shifting its course with smooth precision. But what stunned the Imperials was how it moved. There was no inertia, no lag, no straining on the engines. It glided as if it ignored gravity and momentum completely, stopping, and turning with impossible sharpness. To the Empire's officers who had been trained their whole lives on the strict laws of physics, this was not just advanced. It was wrong. Ships were not supposed to move like that. The Imperial commander, shaken but unwilling to show weakness, ordered his gunners to fire a warning shot. Twin beams of energy streaked through the void, glowing lines that could tear a smaller ship apart. Everyone on the patrol expected the Liberty to shudder under impact or collapse under such fire. Instead, the beams curved away at the last second, as if the human ship bent space itself to refuse the hit. The weapons dissolved into harmless flashes, leaving the Liberty untouched. Gasps filled the Imperial bridge. Their shields had never failed before, but here their weapons had not even connected. Some whispered about forbidden technology, others about tricks of the mind. The commander, red with fury, shouted for more shots. Beam after beam, torpedo after torpedo launched, but each was swallowed, bent, or redirected into nothing. The Liberty did not even return fire. It just floated there, calm and unshaken, as if daring them to continue. On the Liberty's bridge, Daniel gave the order for a single response. A beam of light, thin and precise, flickered from the human ship. It was not meant to destroy, only to warn. The shot struck the Imperial vessel's engines, and in 1 second, the entire dreadnought slowed to silence. Power drained, systems failed, and the mighty warship drifted helplessly. No crew was harmed, no hull was broken, but the message was clear. The humans could end them at will. The Imperial officers stared at their darkened consoles, fear creeping into their hearts. Never before had they seen such a thing. They were trained to believe the Empire was unmatched, that no fleet could rival their power. And yet, here they were, disabled by a single small ship with a captain who had not even raised his voice. The silence that followed was heavy. The Empire's crew waited for destruction, for death, for surrender orders. Instead, the human voice came again, steady and calm. Daniel Harris did not gloat. He did not threaten. He simply told them they were not enemies unless the Empire chose to make them so. It was a warning, but also an invitation to see that humanity was not to be dismissed. As the Liberty pulled away, its strange glow fading into the stars, the Imperial officers knew their lives had just changed. They had witnessed something impossible. The galaxy's laws had been broken before their eyes. Humanity was no longer an unknown backwater species. They had stepped onto the stage of the Empire, and they had done so with technology that should not exist. The first encounter had ended, but the echo of it would spread like wildfire through every Imperial world. Commander Selric stood tall on the bridge of the dreadnought Vornas, his pride swelling as the enormous vessel closed in on the small human ship. To him, the Liberty looked laughable, no larger than a scout craft. Around him, rows of officers and technicians awaited his orders, certain that this encounter would end in swift victory. He opened the communication channel, his voice booming with arrogance as he mocked the human captain, demanding immediate surrender and promising safe passage only if they complied without question. His words dripped with disdain, for in his mind, humans were nothing more than primitive creatures who had stumbled too far into the Empire's domain. On the Liberty, Daniel Harris remained calm. He listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. His crew waited anxiously, hands ready at the controls, but Daniel gave no sign of fear. Instead of answering Selric's demands, he simply ordered his ship to maintain course, shields active but weapons idle. His silence was an insult to the Imperial commander, who was used to enemies trembling at the first sight of his dreadnought. Selric's temper flared, his eyes narrowing as he gave the order to fire a warning shot. Brilliant beams of energy lanced across space, streaking toward the Liberty. But what happened next froze every officer on the Vornas. The beams curved unnaturally away, sliding off into nothingness as if the human vessel were wrapped in a layer of invisible fluid. The Liberty did not even rock under the assault. It stood untouched, unbothered. Selric's jaw clenched in disbelief. No shield he had ever studied could behave like that. Shields absorbed or reflected. They did not bend reality itself. "Impossible," one of his officers whispered, staring at the scanners. Selric slammed his fist against the command chair and barked another order. More shots erupted from the dreadnought's cannons, filling the void with deadly light. Each one bent, vanished, or dissolved before reaching its mark. The crew of the Vornas shifted nervously, their confidence draining with every failed attack. The human ship moved slightly, sliding through space in smooth, fluid motions that ignored the heavy inertia the Imperials had always been bound to. It was like watching a ghost glide through water, uncatchable, untouchable. Selric's voice rose with fury, his pride refusing to accept defeat. Increase firepower. Overload the cannons if you must. Break that ship apart. Dozens of weapons fired in unison, enough to shred a fleet. Yet the Liberty remained unscathed, untouched by the storm. On its bridge, Daniel Harris finally gave a quiet command. A single pulse of light, thin and surgical, flickered across the darkness. It struck the Vorna's engines, and in an instant, the mighty dreadnought shuddered to a halt. Consoles went dark, power failed, and the colossal ship drifted silently. The crew of the Vornas froze in shock. No one was hurt, no explosion followed, but their most powerful systems had been reduced to silence by a flicker of human fire. Selric's face turned pale, rage mixing with a deep fear he could not admit. He had faced rebels, pirates, and rival fleets, but never had he seen his ship rendered powerless so easily. Around him, his officers whispered, some refusing to meet his gaze. For the first time in their lives, they felt helpless. On the Liberty, Daniel's voice carried across the channel, calm and steady. He offered no insults, no threats. He simply told them the truth, that further aggression would not end well, and that humanity sought no conquest, only survival. The words hit harder than any weapon. Selric wanted to scream, to deny, to fight, but the silence of his dead engines left him with nothing but humiliation. His dreadnought, the pride of the fleet, had been reduced to a drifting hulk by a ship half its size. The Liberty turned gracefully, its strange glow rippling against the stars as it moved away. Selric's crew sat in stunned silence, their confidence in the Empire's unmatched strength shattered. They had witnessed something they could not explain, something that broke the laws of physics and mocked the Empire's supremacy. To them, the human ship was not just advanced, it was impossible. And as the Liberty vanished into the darkness, one thought echoed in every mind aboard the Vornas. The galaxy would never be the same again. Imperial scientists stepped cautiously onto the Liberty, their eyes wide as they crossed into a vessel that looked nothing like any ship they had ever seen. The corridors gleamed with smooth metallic walls that seemed to ripple faintly as if alive, no rivets, no seams, no visible wiring, only surfaces that shimmered with a quiet hum. The air felt cleaner, lighter, almost charged with unseen energy. Some of them whispered among themselves, unsettled, but their curiosity outweighed their fear. Against strict orders from their commanders, they had chosen to witness human technology firsthand. Daniel Harris greeted them with calm politeness, offering no arrogance, only quiet confidence. He led them into the heart of the ship, where engines pulsed with soft light instead of roaring flames. One scientist gasped aloud when he realized there were no fuel tanks, no reactor cores, no plasma lines. The Liberty's engines drew power directly from the quantum field, tapping into energies the Empire believed untouchable. Equations they had memorized since childhood told them such things were impossible, yet here it was, running silently before their eyes. Weapons demonstrations left them speechless. The Liberty's armaments were not barrels, cannons, or racks of missiles. Instead, compact nodes lined the hull, humming faintly, as Daniel explained that they manipulated gravity itself. One flicker of a shot could bend spacetime, striking with force, yet leaving no wreckage if restrained. It was power that could destroy without killing, disabling fleets in moments. The scientists exchanged frantic looks, their hearts racing with both awe and dread. To give such tools to the Empire would make them gods. To face them as enemies would be suicide. In the medical bay, a crew member volunteered for a demonstration. A small incision was made on his arm, blood rising to the surface. Before the visitors could protest, the wound was placed beneath a shimmering arc of pale light. Within minutes, the flesh regrew, smooth and unscarred, as if the injury had never existed. One scientist staggered back, shaking his head. Tissue regeneration of this speed, it violates every biological principle we know, he muttered. Another whispered that this technology alone could end centuries of suffering across the Empire, where battlefield injuries and disease still claimed millions. Every step through the Liberty revealed something that defied their training. Doors responded to thought, opening before a hand could even touch them. Information displays hovered in the air, written in shifting light that adjusted to the viewer's understanding of language. Gravity inside the ship was not a fixed field, but carefully tuned, adjusting room by room. One hall was made deliberately weightless, another carried the pull of Earth itself. The scientists realized that humans had not only mastered the physical, they bent it to their will. The visitors huddled together at the end of the tour, their voices low, their faces pale. They spoke of laws broken, of theories overturned, of centuries of study, made irrelevant by a species the Empire had barely considered worth noticing. To them, human progress looked less like science and more like sorcery. They feared what the Senate would say if such revelations spread. Some already knew the Council would order humanity's destruction, fearing what they did not understand. Yet, deep inside, each scientist also felt a flicker of wonder. If humans could achieve the impossible, then perhaps the Empire was not as eternal as it claimed. Daniel Harris dismissed them with courtesy, leaving them to return to their superiors. As the scientists stepped back into their shuttle, none of them could shake the feeling that they had just walked through the future. The Empire had spent millennia believing it ruled the laws of physics, but humanity had shattered that illusion in a single day. What they had witnessed on the Liberty was more than advanced technology. It was the rewriting of reality itself. The Senate chamber buzzed with restless voices, 1,000 whispers rising like waves against the marble walls. Holographic screens floated in the air, replaying grainy footage of the Liberty's impossible maneuvers. the dreadnought Vornas drifting powerless, and the trembling reports from scientists who had stepped aboard the human ship. Senators who once lounged in comfort now leaned forward with unease, their eyes darting to one another, plain afraid to be the first to speak what they all felt, that the Empire was no longer untouchable. One senator slammed his fist against his desk, declaring that humans were a dangerous anomaly. His voice rose with the fervor of a zealot as he demanded immediate annihilation of the species before their secrets spread. He painted visions of human fleets appearing inside imperial capitals, of their technology destabilizing entire systems, of rebels stealing these ideas and rising up with impossible strength. His words fed on fear, and many nodded grimly, desperate to believe that violence could still control this threat. Another senator, older and sharper, countered with caution. He reminded them of the Vornas, of how a single human vessel had crippled 50 ships without killing a soul. He warned that striking such beings might invite not conquest but extinction. "If they wished us gone, we would already be gone," he said, his voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. Murmurs followed, senators turning to one another with uncertainty. The footage of the Liberty's restraint unsettled them more than its power. It suggested not just superiority, but choice. Rumors leaked from military circles and poured like oil on the fire. Admirals, once iron pillars of confidence, admitted in secret that their fleets were useless against humans. Some whispered that human ships could cross space without jump gates, appearing anywhere without warning. Others claimed they harnessed energy from stars directly, making blockades meaningless. Nothing concrete, only speculation. But in a chamber ruled by pride and paranoia, whispers were enough to ignite fear. The debate fractured the Senate into camps. Hardliners demanded war, shouting that the Empire must strike first before weakness was exposed. Moderates called for diplomacy, urging that an alliance with humanity might preserve the Empire's power. A third group sat silent, their eyes distant, already imagining how these revelations might fuel rebellion across their own worlds. Oppressed systems would see hope in humanity's defiance, and hope was far more dangerous than any fleet. As the session dragged on, tension built like a storm. Senators accused one another of cowardice or treachery, their words echoing off the vaulted ceiling. For centuries, the Empire had defined itself as unchallenged, eternal. Now, before their eyes, that certainty cracked. A new name had entered their halls, a small, stubborn species from a forgotten world, and with it came the unsettling truth that the galaxy's order was no longer secure. When the chamber finally recessed, silence lingered in the hallways where senators walked. None dared to speak openly, but each carried the same unspoken thought. Humanity had forced the Empire to confront something it had not faced in millennia. Not another rival, not another rebellion, but the possibility that their supremacy itself was an illusion. And that realization, more than any weapon, terrified them. 50 Imperial warships surrounded the Liberty, their massive hulls glinting like blades in the starlight. The trap was perfect. At least that was what the admirals believed. Formations locked into place, overlapping fields of fire crisscrossed the void, and engines roared with enough power to annihilate a small moon. On every Imperial bridge, crews grinned with grim satisfaction. This time, the human ship would not escape. It was outnumbered, outgunned, and hemmed in on all sides. The Senate watched from afar, convinced that the demonstration would erase the humiliation of earlier defeats. On the Liberty, Captain Daniel Harris stood calmly as alerts filled the bridge. His officers reported the blockade, the charging weapons, the fleets moving into attack stance. Yet not one of them panicked. They had seen what their ship could do, and they trusted in the technology that had carried them across the stars. Daniel gave a single order: hold position. The Liberty remained still, dwarfed by the wall of enemy ships closing in around it. To outside observers, it looked like a prey animal frozen before the predator's strike. The first volley of fire never landed. As hundreds of beams shot forward, the Liberty vanished. One moment it was there, glowing faintly against the dark, and the next it was gone, erased from every scanner, every eye. Imperial officers shouted, frantically searching their displays, convinced it was some cloaking trick. But then alarm screamed, because the impossible had happened. The Liberty reappeared not outside the blockade, but inside, drifting calmly among the very heart of the formation. It had slipped past every net as if the laws of space meant nothing. Panic spread across the Imperial fleet. Ships scrambled to adjust their aim, but by the time they locked on, the Liberty had already shifted again, darting from one side of the formation to the other with ghost-like movements. Human weapons finally fired, not to kill, but to disable. Gravity pulses rippled outward, invisible waves striking Imperial ships. Engines flickered out, weapons froze, systems collapsed one after another. Warships that had ruled countless battles were reduced to drifting husks, their crews shouting in confusion as power failed around them. Not a single shot from the Empire touched the Liberty. Every missile curved away, every cannon blast dissolved before hitting. The human vessel weaved through the chaos with effortless grace, disabling ship after ship in a matter of minutes. The battle, if it could be called that, was over before it began. 50 ships, the pride of the Empire, lay helpless, powerless, defeated without one casualty. In the Senate chamber, the live broadcast played out in silence. Senators leaned forward, eyes wide, their arrogance collapsing into fear. The great empire, unchallenged for centuries, had been humiliated in full view of its own citizens. No propaganda could disguise what had been seen. A single human ship had dismantled a fleet that should have crushed entire worlds. Whispers spread among the gallery, and even the guards shifted uneasily. For the first time in generations, the Empire's dominance had been questioned and answered with proof they could not ignore. On the Liberty, Daniel Harris gave the order to stand down. Weapons powered off, the ship gliding calmly among the crippled fleet. He had made his point with restraint, not destruction. The Empire's ships still lived, their crews unharmed, but the message was carved into the hearts of every witness. Humanity was not a curiosity, not a minor species wandering too far. They were a power that could not be dismissed, a force that had rewritten the rules of war. The void grew quiet again, but the echo of what had just happened thundered across the galaxy. Rebels would hear it as hope, admirals would hear it as terror, and the Senate would hear it as the shattering of their illusion of control. A single human vessel had shown the Empire what it feared most, that its supremacy was not eternal. It could end in an instant. Daniel Harris appeared on every Imperial broadcast at once, his calm face filling the holoscreens across 1,000 worlds. He did not raise his voice nor cloak his words in threats. Instead, he spoke with quiet certainty, his message carrying more weight than any fleet. Humanity, he said, did not seek conquest. They did not come to enslave or dominate. Their technology was not forged for empire. It was born from survival. He told them of Earth's past, of how his people had faced disasters that should have ended them. Nuclear fire had nearly consumed their world, yet they rebuilt. Climate collapse starved billions, yet they endured. Asteroids threatened to erase them, but they invented solutions against the impossible. Every time the universe tried to destroy humanity, they clawed their way back, refusing to vanish. That was why their ships bent physics itself, because survival had demanded it. Across the Empire, soldiers, civilians, and senators listened in silence. The words felt strange, almost unbelievable, because no other species had ever admitted such fragility. Most empires boasted of destiny, of divine right, of superiority. Humans spoke instead of struggle and scars, and in that admission lay a terrifying strength. If a people could thrive after everything tried to kill them, what could possibly break them now? Daniel's eyes hardened as his speech shifted. "Do not mistake our restraint for weakness," he said. "We disabled your fleets without spilling blood because we chose to. But if the Empire forces war upon us, we will answer, and the galaxy will not forget that answer." His voice never rose, but the warning cut sharper than any blade. The Senate chamber fell into stunned silence. Every senator, realizing that this small captain spoke as one who could decide the fate of empires. In taverns on distant mining colonies, workers replayed his words, their voices rising with hope that maybe the Empire was not invincible. On military stations, officers exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence in their own fleets shaken by the memory of powerless dreadnoughts drifting in space. Even among the High Council, where arrogance was tradition, no one laughed at the human's claim. What unsettled them most was not his power, it was his choice. The Liberty had proven it could destroy, yet it had not. Humanity was not reckless. They had no hunger for domination, no thirst for glory. They simply wanted to live. And that truth carried a weight the Empire had never faced before because it revealed a species with nothing to prove, yet everything to protect. When the transmission ended, silence hung heavy across the galaxy. The Empire had been warned, but also offered a chance. The decision now lay not with the humans, but with the senators who trembled in their marble halls. For the first time in centuries, the fate of the Empire was not in its own hands. Humanity had spoken, and the galaxy had listened. Rebel frequencies lit up across the Empire, carrying stolen recordings of the Liberty's victory. Grainy images of Imperial fleets drifting powerless spread from hidden transmitters on mining colonies to crowded markets on city worlds. Oppressed workers watched in awe as the impossible unfolded before their eyes. For generations, the Empire had crushed their hopes with the weight of its fleets. Now, hope had a new face: humanity's defiance. On war-torn planets, insurgents replayed the broadcasts over and over, their voices trembling with excitement as they whispered that the Empire could bleed. Prison camps erupted with murmurs, slaves daring to imagine chains breaking. Even soldiers stationed in far-flung outposts stared in silence at the footage, the cracks of doubt running through their loyalty. If one human ship could cripple 50 of their warships, what chance did they truly have if humanity chose to fight in earnest? Commander Selric raged inside his quarters, smashing consoles and shattering glass displays. His humiliation burned hotter than any plasma fire. He demanded another campaign, a full assault to erase the insult, but his fellow commanders avoided his gaze. Some muttered that the Senate would not approve. Others admitted quietly that they feared facing the humans again. No one said it aloud, but many had already decided. The humans were more terrifying than their own rulers. In the streets of imperial cities, graffiti began to appear. Human silhouettes painted in glowing lines marked the walls with words like "Freedom comes and the Empire can fall." Soldiers sent to erase them hesitated, their hands shaking as they stared at the symbols. Rumors spread that even within the fleets, officers had begun questioning orders. Whole squadrons whispered about defecting if given the chance, convinced the humans would treat them better than their own empire ever had. The Senate chambers grew restless, the old order straining under the weight of fear. Senators who had once spoken with certainty now argued in whispers, afraid of public outcry. Citizens demanded answers, asking why their fleets had failed and why their leaders looked powerless. The myth of the Empire's invincibility was shattering, and the more they tried to hide it, the faster the cracks spread. Selric's fury only deepened as he watched loyalty dissolve around him. He stood on the bridge of the Vornas, his pride in ashes, vowing vengeance. Yet even his own officers moved stiffly, their eyes filled with unease. For the first time, the terror of defying the Empire was overshadowed by the terror of facing humanity. And in that shift, rebellions found strength. Across the galaxy, fires of resistance were kindling. The Liberty had not just defeated ships, it had struck at the very heart of the Empire's illusion. The mighty rulers who had crushed every uprising now found themselves haunted by a single truth. Fear no longer belonged to the people. It belonged to the Empire itself. The High Council chamber lay in uneasy silence, its towering pillars and golden light no longer symbols of strength but of fragile pride. Senators shifted in their seats as the great doors opened, and Captain Daniel Harris of the Liberty walked alone into the hall. He carried no guards, no weapons, only the weight of what everyone had seen: the fall of fleets, the bending of reality, the proof that the Empire was not supreme. Every senator who once ruled with arrogance now felt their throats tighten at the sight of a single human. Daniel's boots echoed on the marble floor, each step deliberate, each movement calm. He stopped at the center of the chamber, the circle where great rulers once stood to demand submission from conquered species. But this time, no demand came from the Empire. The silence was broken only by the sound of nervous breaths. For the first time in living memory, it was the council that waited and the outsider who spoke. "We came not to conquer," Daniel said, his voice steady, carrying across the vast chamber without strain. "We came to show that your strength is not infinite. You've built your empire on fear and submission, but fear has its limits. You've seen what our technology can do, and you know this truth. If you attempt to enslave us, you will not survive." His eyes scanned the chamber, locking with senator after senator until they looked away. A ripple of unease passed through the room. Some senators clutched their robes, others tapped restless fingers against polished desks. They had gathered expecting threats of fire and war. Instead, Daniel offered a choice. "We offer peace, cooperation, and knowledge," he continued. "We will trade, we will share, we will live beside you, but if you force war upon us, the Empire will cease to exist. That decision is yours." The words hung heavy in the air, sharper than any blade. In the galleries above, ambassadors and aides exchanged nervous glances. None dared to laugh. None dared to dismiss him. They had seen too much to deny. The image of 50 drifting warships still haunted their minds. The thought of rebels rising with human backing gnawed at their fears. And the calm certainty of Daniel Harris's tone struck deeper than any shouted threat. The silence stretched until an elderly senator finally rose. His voice trembled, not with age, but with fear. "We accept dialogue," he said, each word careful. Around him, others nodded quickly, eager to cloak their terror with the appearance of reason. The Empire, so proud and untouchable, had bowed in that single moment. Daniel inclined his head slightly, then turned and walked back toward the great doors. He did not look back, for he knew what had been decided. The council would never openly admit weakness, but the truth was carved into their hearts. They feared humanity more than they feared rebellion, more than they feared their own downfall. When the doors closed behind him, the chamber erupted into frantic whispers. Some spoke of alliances, others of secret plots to seize human technology, but all shared the same unspoken truth. The age of unquestioned imperial dominance was over. Outside, the Liberty waited, its hull glowing faintly against the stars. Across the galaxy, rumors spread faster than light, that the Council had bent, that humanity had stood unarmed in the Empire's grandest chamber and walked away as the stronger power. For centuries, the galaxy had lived beneath the shadow of the Empire. Now a new shadow stretched across the stars, not of conquest but of possibility. The age of humanity had begun.